name nearly stopped my heart. $53,000, jewelry, luxury spa treatments, and a first-class trip to Paris. Hours later, a cheerful text popped up. Love the gifts, mother-in-law. I stared at the screen, hands trembling. The card she used was mine. I opened the statement again, each line a new shock. Tiffany & Company, $18,000. Cartier, $22,000. Premium spa package, $3,500. First class tickets to Paris, $9,500. My kitchen chair felt like ice beneath me. 3 years ago, I sat here every morning with Harold before cancer took him. Now I sat alone, humiliated. The worst part wasn't the money, it was the message. The casual cruelty of assuming I was too timid to fight back. Another ping. Photos from a Paris suite, Zuri raising a champagne glass, the diamond bracelet on her wrist, sparkling like a spotlight on my shame. I tried to steady my breath, gazing out at the roses Harold planted. I'd nurtured them alone for years, believing my home and my trust were safe. How had she gotten my card? Last Sunday's dinner, when she insisted on helping with the dishes, when she hugged me goodbye. I'd been so grateful for even a hint of affection, so desperate to stay close to my only child, Tyson. Then my phone rang. Tyson. Mom, he said, Zuri told me you gave her permission to use your card for our anniversary trip. She's worried you might regret it. Her lie was perfect. Tyson, I said carefully, I never gave anyone permission. That's theft. Silence. Then his voice, low and doubtful. Mom, she showed me your messages. Maybe you forgot? Dr. Peterson said grief can affect memory. I gripped the phone tighter. I know exactly what I said. Someone used my card without my consent. That's not a misunderstanding. Zuri claimed it was only a few thousand for a hotel and a few souvenirs. For a moment, Tyson and I just breathed on the line, the silence stretching. I could hear the first crack in the certainty she'd fed him. Tyson, I said softly, steadying my voice. When you get home, check her luggage. Look in her jewelry box. Then ask yourself if a few $1,000s could buy what she's wearing in those photos she keeps posting. Before he could answer, I ended the call. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. This silence felt different. Not the gentle quiet of an empty house, but the hollow echo of betrayal. For 3 years, I'd tried to buy a kind of affection that was never for sale. I'd bent over backwards for a woman who only saw me as a convenient account to draw from. But as I stared again at the credit card statement, a new feeling rose beneath the hurt. Something I hadn't felt in years. Resolve. I reached for my reading glasses and studied every line, because there was one thing Zuri didn't know about that particular card, and it could change everything. Sleep never came that night. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw her Paris photos, her smug smile, the quiet insults she'd delivered at family dinners. Memories flooded back like a dam breaking. The warning signs had been there all along. The wedding day, no seat saved for me at the family table. I sat with Harold's elderly cousins while she avoided my eyes. Tyson later insisted it was just an oversight. I'd believed him. That was my first mistake. Family photos, somehow every candid shot excluded me. Oh, we'll take another later, Zuri would say. Later never came. The first Christmas. I knitted her a cashmere scarf in her favorite color. She held it up for 3 seconds, said, "How thoughtful. Someone will love this," and set it aside. Weeks later, I found it in their closet, Goodwill tags still attached. Mother's Day. I cooked Tyson's childhood favorites, only to hear her call my dishes authentic, like museum relics. My son laughed along, blind to how she diminished me with every word. That same day, she hinted about buying a bigger, more secure house. Close enough, she said, to help when Agatha needs us. I'd answered quietly that I was fine living alone. Her smile never faltered. Oh, I know you think you are. But things can change so quickly at your age. Memory issues, falls, confusion with medication. Tyson and I worry about you constantly. I remember the way my son's eyes shifted. Not love, not warmth assessment. Was Mom slipping, becoming a burden? Zuri had planted that seed and watered it carefully. There were so many little digs. The helpful reorganizing of my purse so I'd look scattered. Speaking loudly to me in public as if I were hard of hearing. Pointing out when I repeated a story I'd told only once, months earlier. And always the financial suggestions wrapped in false concern. Have you thought about automatic bill payments, Agatha? Maybe a financial advisor? Tyson could be added to your accounts, just for emergencies. Grief had already softened me. She used it like a crowbar, prying at my independence inch by inch. Every time I mentioned Harold, Zuri used it as proof that I was fragile, patting my hand like I might break, telling anyone who would listen. It's so hard when older people lose their partners. They can lose touch with reality a little. Completely understandable, but it does make you worry. Now, sitting in my kitchen at 3 a.m, the pattern was unmistakable. Every kind gesture I'd made had been twisted into evidence of decline. Every attempt to stay independent became dangerous stubbornness. Every gift of love became a reason to see me as an easy target. I opened my laptop, something I should have done months earlier, and began checking every bank account. The numbers chilled me. This wasn't the first time. For 6 months, there had been charges I'd missed. $800 at a high-end restaurant on a night I'd eaten at home. $1,200 at a spa I'd never visited. A string of boutique and luxury purchases, all small enough to slip past my notice. The $53,000 Paris spree wasn't a sudden mistake. It was the grand finale of a long, careful scheme. Then I saw something that made me sit back, heart pounding. The card used for most of these charges wasn't even one of my personal accounts. It belonged to the business Harold and I built 30 years ago, Whitmore and Associates. After his death, I'd stepped away but never closed the company. Tyson had been helping me finish the last contracts and was an authorized signer, which meant every dollar Zuri spent wasn't just personal theft. It was corporate fraud, a crime with serious penalties. I shut the laptop and leaned back, mind racing. For 3 years, I'd played defense, afraid of losing my son, letting his wife take my dignity and my savings piece by piece. But Zuri had gotten greedy. She'd used the wrong card. One protected by business law, still under my name, still audited. For the first time in months, I smiled. Not the polite smile I'd worn for family dinners, but something sharper. If Zuri thought I was a confused widow, she was about to meet the real me. At sunrise, I did something I hadn't done in years. I put on the navy Armani suit Harold bought me for our company's 10th anniversary. It still fit. I styled my silver hair like I had for board meetings, applied makeup with a steady hand, and met my own eyes in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't a grieving victim. She was Agatha Whitmore, co-founder of a multi-million-dollar consulting firm, the negotiator who once closed contracts with Fortune 500 companies. I'd forgotten her, but she hadn't gone anywhere. My first stop was the downtown office where Whitmore and Associates had worked for 25 years. I still had the key. The receptionist looked up in surprise as I walked in. "Mrs. Whitmore, I wasn't expecting you today." "Good morning, Maria," I said, voice calm and professional. "I need access to the company files and a meeting with our accountant." "Is Jennifer available?" Maria dialed quickly. "She'll be right down." Moments later, Jennifer Morrison, our financial advisor for over a decade, stepped out of the elevator, concern flickering in her eyes. "Agatha," she said, "what brings you in?" "I need a full review of every company credit card transaction from the past 6 months," I replied, my tone steady and businesslike. "I also need to review our audit requirements and fraud protection policies," I told Jennifer. Her eyebrows lifted. "Is there a problem?" "There may be," I replied. "I'd rather see the documents before I explain." She led me into the conference room where Harold and I had once celebrated our biggest contracts and fought through our toughest negotiations. The familiar space steadied me, reminding me of who I'd been before grief tried to shrink me. Jennifer spread the statements across the mahogany table. Together we went line by line. What I'd uncovered the night before was only the surface. 8 months of unauthorized purchases, small at first, then bolder. Designer boutiques, luxury spas, fine dining charges coded as business expenses for a firm that was supposed to be winding down. "This card was issued to Tyson as an authorized user," Jennifer said carefully. "He has signing authority for the transition we discussed last year. But he's clearly not making these purchases." I slid my phone across the table, showing her a photo from Zuri's Paris trip, the diamond bracelet flashing on her wrist. That bracelet was charged to client entertainment 3 weeks ago, $18,000. Jennifer's expression hardened. "Agatha, that isn't just theft. That's corporate fraud." The word settled like a stone in the room. "What does that mean for us?" I asked. "Federal charges, heavy fines, possibly jail time. The IRS takes false documentation very seriously." A sharp mix of satisfaction and dread washed over me. Satisfaction that Zuri's scheme finally carried real consequences. Dread, because those consequences might reach my son. What's our next step? We file a fraud report immediately, Jennifer said. The company has to protect itself. Waiting only makes it worse. And Tyson? I asked. That depends. If he knew, he's equally liable. If he was unaware, he'll still face serious questions about oversight. I looked at the statements spread before us. Had my son known? I need to speak with him first, I said. Agatha, legally? 24 hours, I interrupted. Then we do what's necessary. Jennifer hesitated, then nodded. But no more charges. I'm freezing the account now. The rest of the day, I worked from my old office, making calls and reviewing files. By evening, the full picture was clear. Nearly $75,000 siphoned off over 8 months. Every dollar traceable. That night, I used the spare key Tyson had once given me and stepped quietly into their house while they were still overseas. I wasn't there to steal or even to collect evidence. I had all I needed. I needed to see, to understand how they lived, how they thought about money. The place was stunning. Expensive furniture, art pieces worth more than my annual grocery bills, a wine collection fit for a magazine spread. But then I noticed the papers. Stacks of bills scattered across the kitchen counter, some stamped past due. Credit card statements showing balances that dwarfed what Zuri had taken from me, a mortgage months behind. A notice from the dealership about missed payments on her BMW. They were drowning in debt, living far beyond their means, and my company's money had been keeping them afloat. In their bedroom, I found Zuri's enormous jewelry box, practically a museum piece, stuffed with treasures I recognized from the statements. The diamond earrings from March, the pearl necklace from April, the tennis bracelet from May. A glittering timeline of theft displayed like trophies. But it was what lay hidden in the bottom drawer that made me freeze. Inside the folder was a map of my life. Property records detailing the value of my home. Printouts of Harold's obituary with his business accomplishments highlighted. Internet searches on inheritance laws and power of attorney procedures. At the bottom lay a single handwritten note in Zuri's elegant script. Timeline established, pattern of confusion, memory issues, add to accounts by summer, POA by Christmas, full access within 18 months. My hands shook. 18 months. She'd been planning this all along. The credit card spree hadn't been a moment of reckless greed. It was a rehearsal for something far bigger. I photographed every page, heart pounding, then replaced the folder exactly as I'd found it and slipped out of the house. Back home, I poured a glass of Harold's best scotch and sat in his old chair. Zuri wasn't just manipulative, she was a predator, and I had been her chosen prey. But she'd underestimated me. She'd forgotten that I built and ran a successful company for 3 decades. She thought I was playing checkers. I was about to play chess. My phone buzzed, a text from Tyson. Flying home tomorrow. We should talk. I smiled as I typed. Yes, we should. Come by Sunday evening. Bring Zuri. There's something we all need to discuss. Sunday evening, the autumn air carried a sharp chill as I set the table. The house warm with the smell of pot roast, Tyson's childhood favorite. Tonight wasn't about nostalgia. Tonight was about truth. They arrived on time. Zuri looked radiant in a new designer outfit, her diamond bracelet flashing beneath the lights. Paid for with stolen money. Agatha, you look wonderful, she said sweetly, her voice just a shade too warm. I hope you weren't too worried while we were gone. I know you can get anxious when you can't reach Tyson. The subtle dig was flawless, reinforcing her story of an over-anxious aging mother. I only smiled. I'm so glad you're home. Come in. Dinner's ready. We sat. Tyson looked drawn, his eyes shifting between his wife and me. Something had changed since Paris. So tell me about your trip, I said, serving the pot roast. Zuri lit up, describing their suite with floor-to-ceiling windows, the restaurants, the shopping. She spoke in shimmering detail, but never once mentioned the cost. And that bracelet, I said lightly. It's stunning. She lifted her wrist, diamonds sparkling. This old thing? I've had it forever, though I might have picked up a few pieces while we were there. You know how it is. When in Paris, the lie slid out as smooth as silk. I turned to Tyson, searching his face. Unreadable. Actually, I said, setting down my fork, I wanted to discuss something. I've been reviewing financial statements and noticed some unusual charges. Zuri's fork paused midair, but her smile didn't falter. Oh, what kind of charges? Credit card purchases. Significant ones. I don't recall making them. I'm wondering if someone might have gained access to one of my accounts. The silence was sharp enough to cut. Tyson set down his fork and looked straight at his wife. Zuri, didn't you say Mom gave you permission to use her card for the trip? For just an instant, I saw it, the flicker of panic. Then Zuri's mask slid back into place, all wounded innocence. Of course she did, Agatha, she said softly. Surely you remember our conversation. You insisted on treating us for our anniversary. You said it was your gift, Zuri pressed, her voice honey-sweet. What conversation was that? I asked quietly. The one after dinner last Sunday, she replied smoothly. You walked me to the car and gave me the card. You even said Harold would have wanted you to be generous with family. Invoking Harold's name was a masterstroke, meant to make me doubt myself, to turn any challenge into a betrayal of my late husband's memory. But not tonight. That's interesting, I said, reaching behind me for a folder. Because the card you used wasn't one of my personal accounts. I spread the statements across the table. These charges were made to the Whitmore and Associates business account, the company your father and I built. Tyson, the company that's still legally active and subject to federal audit requirements. Tyson's face drained of color. Mom, I thought the business was finished. It's winding down, I said, but it's not dissolved. Every purchase on that card must be documented as a legitimate business expense. Explain to me how a luxury suite in Paris qualifies. Zuri's composure faltered. This is ridiculous. It was just a mix-up. $75,000 isn't a mix-up, I said evenly. It's fraud. The word landed like a hammer. Tyson pushed back from the table, chair scraping hard. 75? Mom, you said 53 on the phone. That was only the Paris charges, I answered, laying out more statements like evidence in court. March 15th, Lernardon Restaurant, $800. March 22nd, Elizabeth Arden Spa, $1,200. April 3rd, Nordstrom, $2,600. With each date and amount, Zuri seemed to shrink, while Tyson straightened, understanding dawning. You've been using Mom's business account for months, he said, his voice low and sharp. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal, Zuri snapped. She has plenty. The business was just sitting there. The business that could send us both to federal prison if the IRS calls this fraud. Tyson shot back. The business I'm authorized on. Do you even grasp what you've done? What about her? Zuri countered, her tone turning bitter. Sitting on all that money while we're drowning in debt. Living in that big house alone while we can barely pay the mortgage. She should want to help us. By stealing from her? Tyson's voice rose. By forging business expenses? By making me an accessory? I watched with a strange mix of sadness and relief. My son was finally seeing his wife clearly. There's more, I said softly, pulling out my phone. I found these in your house. I handed it to Tyson. He scrolled through the photos, property records, highlighted obituaries, and the handwritten plan. With each image, his face hardened. Power of attorney by Christmas. Full access within 18 months. He read aloud, his voice hollow. He looked up at Zuri, and I saw the exact moment his love died. You were planning to take everything, not just from Mom, from me. Once you had control, how long before you decided you didn't need me either? It's not like that. I love you, Tyson. I was doing this for us, Zuri pleaded. No, he said coldly. You were doing it for you. You've been lying to me for years, making me think Mom was confused, that she needed us to handle her finances. You turned me against my own mother. She was never there for you, Zuri shot back, desperate now. Always working, leaving you with babysitters. She doesn't deserve your loyalty. Stop. Tyson's voice cracked like a whip. Don't you dare talk about my mother that way. She built a business that put me through college and gave us everything we have. Everything we had, Zuri muttered bitterly. Because now we're going to lose it all, aren't we? The house, the cars, everything. All because you can't stand up to your precious mommy. I rose slowly, feeling the weight of 65 years, but standing tall. Actually, Zuri, I said, my voice steady, that depends entirely on what happens next. Both of them turned to me. Tyson with a flicker of hope, Zuri with sharp calculation. I've spoken with the company's legal team, I said evenly. The fraud report hasn't been filed yet. If every dollar is repaid, with interest and penalties, we can treat this as a family matter. No criminal charges, no federal investigation. Zuri's eyes narrowed. What's the catch? I looked at Tyson and saw Harold's integrity staring back at me. The catch is that this ends now. Every lie, every manipulation, and there will be consequences. The dining room fell silent. the air tight as a drawn bowstring. For the first time in 3 years, I was no one's victim. I was Agatha Whitmore again. What kind of consequences? Zuri asked, her voice cool but trembling underneath. I retrieved a manila folder from the sideboard and placed it on the table. Inside were the documents I'd prepared. Contracts, legal papers, financial statements, the full truth of the past 3 years. First, I said. You'll return every single item bought with company funds, every piece of jewelry, every designer outfit, every luxury purchase. I have receipts and photographs for all of it. Zuri's hand flew to the diamond bracelet on her wrist. That's impossible. Some of these things were gifts. I've worn them. Then you'll return what you can and pay full retail value for the rest, I cut in. At full price, not resale. With what money? Her voice cracked. We don't have that kind of cash. Then you'll find it. Get a job. Sell the car. Downsize, I said, sliding the first document across the table. Because the alternative is a federal fraud charge, and orange isn't your color. Tyson turned from the window, his shoulders heavy. Mom, you said consequences, plural. I pulled out the second document. Zuri will sign a promissory note for the total stolen, $78,467, plus interest and penalties. Repayment over 5 years. Market rates. Zuri's voice rose. We can't afford $16,000 a year. You should have thought of that before financing your lifestyle with my company's money, I replied. Common business-like. Her face paled. And I continued, you'll sign a statement admitting to the unauthorized use of company funds. I'll hold it as insurance against any future misunderstandings. You're trying to destroy me, she whispered. No, I said. You did that yourself. I'm making sure you can't destroy anyone else. Finally, I drew out the last paper, the one that mattered most. You will have no contact with me moving forward. No family dinners, no holidays, no surprise visits. You will stay away from my home, my business, and my life. Zuri shot to her feet, chair scraping hard against the floor. You can't cut me off from family. What about Tyson? Future grandchildren? I looked at my son. In his eyes, I saw pain, an unmistakable relief. Tyson is my son, I said quietly. He will always be welcome. But you've proven you can't be trusted. I won't invite manipulation back into my home. This is insane, Zuri hissed, pacing like a trapped animal. You're breaking up our marriage over money. Over a misunderstanding. I'm not breaking up anything, I answered. I'm protecting what Harold and I built. What you and Tyson do with your marriage is up to you. Tyson finally spoke, his voice low but firm. She's right, Zuri, about all of it. You can't be serious, Zuri pleaded. Baby, please. I made mistakes, but I did it for us. Your mother has more than she'll ever spend. We're struggling. I just wanted to even things out. By forging business expenses? Tyson's voice sharpened. By planning to have her declared incompetent so you could take everything? I read those documents. Your timeline. Your plans. Zuri's face went still, the last of her defenses crumbling. Tyson stepped closer to me, shoulders squared. There's no evening this out, he said quietly. There's right and there's wrong. And what you did is wrong. The room held a final, ringing silence. For the first time in years, I felt the power settle where it belonged. I was no longer the grieving widow she thought she could control. I was Agatha Whitmore, business owner, mother, survivor, and the game was over. You weren't trying to help our marriage, Tyson said, his voice low but sharp. You were planning to get rid of me, too, once you controlled Mom's assets. That's not true, Zuri protested. Then explain the research about divorce settlements in that same folder, he shot back. Explain why you were searching how to protect assets during a divorce. Zuri's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time since I'd known her, she had no clever answer. I rose to my feet, steadier than I'd felt in years. You have 48 hours, I said. Sign these agreements, and we keep this private. Or I file the fraud report and let the federal government handle it. Her eyes narrowed. And if I refuse? If I call your bluff? I smiled, a smile without warmth. Try me. I spent 30 years negotiating with corporate executives who would eat you for breakfast and use your bones as toothpicks. You don't scare me. Something in my tone broke her defiance. Her shoulders sagged as she looked around the room, at the family photos that didn't include her, the well-worn furniture that spoke of decades of real love and hard work. This isn't over, she said, but her voice was hollow. Yes, it is, I replied. It ended the moment you decided to steal from me. You just didn't realize it yet. Zuri grabbed her purse and stalked toward the door, turning for one last shot. You'll regret this, both of you, when you're sitting here alone with no family left. You'll remember tonight. I've been alone for 3 years, Zuri, I said softly. The only difference now is I don't have to pretend otherwise. She slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Silence settled over the house as Tyson and I faced each other across the wreckage of what had been our family. Mom, he said at last, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I should have seen it. I should have protected you. I took his hands, the same hands I'd held when he was a frightened little boy. You were manipulated by someone very skilled at it, I told him. She's probably practiced on others. And I ignored the signs because I wanted so badly to be part of your new life. We both made mistakes. Grief makes us vulnerable. He nodded, tears in his eyes. You're my mother. I should have trusted you, he whispered. We start fresh now, I said. Just the two of us, the way it should have been. He pulled me into a fierce hug, the kind we'd shared at Harold's funeral. When he stepped back, I saw resolve in his eyes. What happens next, he asked. Zuri will do what she always does, I said. Find someone new to manipulate. That's no longer our problem. The next morning, Tyson moved back into his childhood bedroom. 3 days later, the signed agreements arrived on my doorstep with no note. Within a week, boxes of jewelry, designer clothes, and expensive shoes began arriving. Every stolen item returned. She kept her word, though she hadn't really had a choice. 2 weeks later, divorce papers citing irreconcilable differences were filed. Zuri never contested them, but the real victory wasn't in the money or the legal documents. It was in getting my son back. 6 months later, I stood in my kitchen on a bright Sunday morning, making breakfast for 2, something I hadn't done since Harold passed. Sunlight streamed through freshly cleaned windows, and the house felt alive again. Tyson wandered in, hair tousled, wearing the same old college t-shirt he'd kept since he was 20. For a moment, it was as if the past 3 years had been nothing but a bad dream. Morning, Mom? Coffee smells amazing, he said, sliding into his chair. Sit down, I told him, plating eggs and bacon. Breakfast is ready. He looked healthier, the strain gone from his face. Any word from Jennifer about the final payment? He asked. It came through yesterday, I replied, pouring his orange juice, the same small ritual we'd shared when he was a teenager. Zuri has officially paid back every cent with interest. I smiled as Tyson dug into his breakfast, the warm light catching the roses outside the window. New blooms we planted together. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't in fighting harder. It's in refusing to keep fighting a battle you were never meant to lose. The business account was officially closed, the last signature dry on the dissolution papers. Whitmore and Associates was finally gone, retired with dignity after 3 decades. I sat across from Tyson, feeling lighter than I had in years. Your father would be proud of how we handled everything, I said. He nodded, though a shadow still flickered in his eyes whenever Zuri's name came up. The divorce had been final for 3 months, but betrayal doesn't disappear with a single court date. Have you heard from her at all? I asked gently. A few texts at first, he admitted, trying to convince me you forced her to confess to things she didn't do. But nothing for a month. I think she's finally accepted it's over. I'd heard through acquaintances that she'd moved to California, already engaged to a man decades older with significant real estate holdings. The pattern was repeating itself, just as I'd predicted, but she was no longer our concern. I have something to tell you, I said, setting down my coffee. I'm thinking of selling the house. Tyson's fork paused midair. Really? Why? It's too big for me now, and too full of memories. Some good, some painful. I'm ready for a fresh start. Where would you go? I smiled, a flutter of excitement stirring for the first time in years. I've been looking at condos downtown near the waterfront. There's one with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the harbor. That sounds perfect, he said, and I heard the genuine happiness in his voice. You deserve a place that makes you excited to wake up in the morning. And you? I asked. Have you thought about what's next? He set down his fork, meeting my eyes. I have. Morrison Consulting offered me a position heading their new digital transformation division. Great salary, real growth. I could finally afford my own place. That's wonderful, sweetheart. When do you start? Next month, if you're okay on your own. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Tyson, I've been taking care of myself for 65 years. I think I can manage. I know. But after everything with Zuri, I worry about leaving you vulnerable. To what? Another manipulative daughter-in-law, I laughed. This time the sound was easy and real. I learned my lesson. The next woman you bring home will have to pass a very thorough inspection. He grinned. The next woman I bring home will have to understand that my mother is a force of nature. That should scare off most of the gold diggers. A new view. Later that week, we visited the waterfront condo together. The real estate agent, Sarah, welcomed us into a converted warehouse with a rooftop garden and first-class security. This is the corner unit I mentioned, she said as we stepped from the elevator. Tyson's breath caught when the door opened. The space glowed with light. Open concept, sleek kitchen, hardwood floors, windows framing the harbor like a living painting. Mom, this is incredible, he said, walking to the glass. Look at that view. I joined him, watching white sails drift across deep blue water. For the first time in years, I could picture a home that belonged entirely to me. I'll take it, I said. Sarah blinked. Don't you want to compare units? Think it over? I've been thinking about it for months, I replied. This is perfect. 3 weeks later, I signed the papers. 2 weeks after that, Tyson and I worked side by side as moving trucks carried 40 years of memories from the old house. What about this? He asked, holding up a photo from his high school graduation, one Zuri had insisted on taking, cutting me half out of the frame so she could stand closer to him. Trash? I said without hesitation. And this one? He lifted a stiff family photo from last Christmas. Trash, I repeated, smiling. The new condo filled quickly with fresh light and quiet peace. On Sunday mornings, I brewed coffee while Tyson, newly settled into his own apartment nearby, dropped by for breakfast. The final payment from Zuri cleared without incident. Every cent plus interest returned. The past finally and completely was behind us. As we shared eggs and bacon with the harbor sparkling beyond the windows, I realized something simple and profound. Strength isn't always in fighting harder. Sometimes it's in stepping out of the battle entirely and choosing the life you deserve. For the first time in years, the future felt wide open. Trash, Mom, I said again, dropping another photo into the box. Mom, you're throwing away everything that has Zuri in it, Tyson murmured. Exactly. I'm not keeping reminders of someone who tried to destroy our family. He fell quiet, then held up another picture, just the two of us at Harold's grave on the first anniversary of his passing. What about this one? I studied our faces, both of us grieving, but together, real. That one goes in my bedroom, I said. By evening, the house was empty except for a few pieces the new owners had purchased. I stood in the living room where I'd raised my son, where Harold and I had built a life, where Zuri had once tried to make me feel small. Any regrets? Tyson asked from the doorway. None, I answered, and meant it. A home of my own. The condo felt like a sanctuary. Everything inside was chosen by me, for me. Art I loved. Furniture meant for comfort, not display. On my first night there, I curled up on the new sofa with a glass of wine and watched the sunset paint the harbor in shades of gold and pink. My phone buzzed, a text from Tyson. How's the first night in the new place? Perfect. Absolutely perfect, I replied. Dinner Sunday, I found a great little Italian spot. It's a date, but I'm buying, he wrote. I want to celebrate your freedom. 3 months into this new life, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I joined a book club, then a photography class, then a Tuesday morning walking group along the waterfront. I was making friends again, real friends who knew me simply as Agatha. Not as mom, not as the widow, not as the victim. One evening after book club, I found Tyson waiting in the lobby with a bottle of champagne and a wide grin. Oh, what are we celebrating? I asked. My promotion, your freedom, and the fact that we both survived the worst thing that ever happened to our family and came out stronger. Up on my balcony, we popped the cork and watched the harbor lights flicker on. I love you, Mom, he said quietly. I'm sorry it took me so long to find my way back. I love you too, sweetheart. And I'm not sorry about any of it. Not even the stolen money. Not even that. If Zuri hadn't gotten so greedy, if she hadn't made that crucial mistake with the business account, she might have succeeded. She might have gained power of attorney, maybe even had me declared incompetent. Instead, she reminded me of something vital. I'm stronger than I ever believed. I don't need crumbs of affection from anyone who doesn't truly care. I can build a life that's entirely my own. Tyson smiled. So what comes next? I looked out at the harbor, where boats slipped across the water, untethered and free. Whatever I want, I said. For the first time in my life, whatever I want. And for the first time in years, That felt like the greatest gift of all. If you've made it this far, I'd love to hear from you. What would you do in my place? Have you ever faced a betrayal that forced you to start over? Share your thoughts in the comments. And on the final screen, you'll find 2 other stories from this channel. Audience favorites that might just surprise you. Thank you for watching and for being part of this journey.